Cloudcast Media. Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and this is a longtime friend and colleague of mine that's going to be talking about a subject that's going to be pretty heavy. Just want to give you folks an update on that. But she's the former police chief in San Diego, Shelley Zimmerman. So before we get into a pretty serious topic that I'm glad you're willing to chat about this, I want to thank you. I mean, you were an iconic police chief as an iconic assistant police chief, and I wanted to thank you so much for your service in San Diego.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. But I would tell you, I am the one that thanks, the department, thanks the city for the privilege to be the chief of police and, serve for 35 years with the San Diego Police Department. And by the way, they're hiring. So looking for great people.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate that. So let's get right into it. You took a trip from San Diego with the San Diego Jewish Federation to Poland called the March of Living. Talk about the trip and why did you do it?
And thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. I'll tell you is that, so let's talk about what the March of the Living is. It's held on Yom HaShoah, which is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Thousands, Jews and non-Jews, is young and old, and they came from around the world to walk the 3 kilometers from Auschwitz to Birkenau, and that's about 1.8 miles. And Auschwitz and Birkenau, people know, is that they're 2 of the most infamous Nazi death camps in Poland. And it is called the March of the Living because it reverses what once happened there. And it was the Nazis' attempt to extinguish the Jewish people who were forced to walk to their deaths. And now, all of us, we came together and we walked that same road as the living in freedom, in remembrance, and in defiance of the hate that tried to extinguish and erase the Jewish people. And this year's march that I participated in...
Was it your first one?
Correct, yes. Okay. It was my first one. First time I'd ever been in Poland, too.
Okay.
It was the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi death camps. And it brought together this year 144 delegations from around the world. There was about 7,000 participants.
Wow.
And it included 80 Holocaust survivors and 7 released hostages from Gaza.
So did you get a chance to meet the hostages?
I did not get any chance to meet the hostages, but during our travels, I did have the privilege to meet and speak with a few of the Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, if I could go back to, October 7th, it was the 7th, is that correct, in 2000?
Correct, 2023.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I shared this with you at all. So obviously the massacre of, the folks in Israel by Hamas. A week later, I had on the show the head of the Jewish Federation, she was already booked on the show. And
was that Heidi?
It was.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be she was booked 2 months because we were booked 2 or 3 months out. And of course, this thing happened. And so I asked her, I said, first of all, I just can't even begin to feel for you because it was her sister, city, so to speak, or area that was, obliterated by these killers. I said, if you want to not talk about that, that's up to you. She goes, how can I not talk about that? I just wanted to give her the opportunity. You and I talked about that shortly thereafter.
Yeah, we have to talk about it. And that's why it is so important. And, you talk about Heidi. When I took my first trip to Israel in 2023, it was with Heidi and San Diego Jewish Federation. And this trip also with the March of the Living was with the San Diego Jewish Federation and Heidi.
So talk about that experience at Auschwitz and so forth, suitcases, and what was your emotions before you got there, and what are your emotions when you got there?
Yeah, and I will tell you, it was an incredible meaningful trip. And, as I say, I didn't just witness history. I walked in its shadow. I served in its name. And now I'm carrying it forward by speaking about it, so others hear it. And before we actually, the day before the march, we bore witness and toured Auschwitz, and we toured Birkenau. And I will tell you is that one of the members of our group shared that, to her knowledge, that she did not have any relatives that perished in the camps. And as we're walking through Auschwitz and we move through the exhibits, and I would tell you is that it was room after room that was just filled with haunting artifacts and photographs. And there were many people inside these rooms, but it was absolutely eerily silent. People were just in their own space and taking it all in, until that silence was broken by a loud gasp, followed by sobs. Because what had happened is, in one of the rooms, there was a huge glass case that was the entire one wall of the room, and it was filled with suitcases once carried by Jews that were deported to their deaths. Many of the suitcases were labeled with their family name, but there was one that stood out. It bore her family name.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I don't think I shared. Oh, you have a question, Kristen?
No, I just, the timing and the chance of that happening just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So I have had a chance to visit Theresienstadt, which was in Czechoslovakia, was a death camp. And almost the same thing when we were there. It was 1977, which isn't that far removed from, what was going on. And you hit the nail on the head. No one said a word. No one said a word walking through that camp. And I don't know how to even explain it. It must have been the same feeling you had.
Yeah, everybody was internal, taking it in with their own thoughts. And I would tell you, though, is that after we had gone through, what had just happened in that room and then several other rooms, and then we walked outside, after one of the exhibits, and I saw another delegation. As I said, there was over 144 delegations, and I listened in as there was a Holocaust survivor with another delegation share her story. And all of a sudden, her group, spontaneously began to sing Hatikva. And I watched as this survivor, who was pretty frail, who was seated in a wheelchair, struggled to rise. But then she stood with fierce pride and strength singing, and our delegation joined in song. And I would tell you is that she obviously had survived the unimaginable, and she understood, as we all did, that what it meant to sing the national anthem of Israel on that very soil where so many did not walk out alive.
Yeah, we're chatting with Shelley Zimmerman. You know her as former San Diego police chief. She's chatting about her visit with the San Diego Jewish Federation to Poland during the March of Living, and talking about some of these experiences at Auschwitz and so forth. How much, how many survivors you said were with you? How many Holocaust survivors?
There was 80 Holocaust survivors for the 80th anniversary of this March of the Living.
And were they living all over the world, or were they San Diego? Where were they from?
They were from all over the world. I met some from, Toronto, Canada, some from, children, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, from San Diego,
right.
Survivors, but they were from all over the world.
How many of them were at Auschwitz?
I don't know the exact number, but I know some of them were.
I can't even begin to imagine. It doesn't make a difference what death camp they were in, but especially with Auschwitz, that must have been just how powerful. And you and I touched on something that I have to remind people and say there are two words in the lexicon of Jews, and that's never again. And you can not say that enough, okay? And never forget. And never dismiss this thing. And every generation between now and till there's no more Earth needs to know about this stuff. 100%.
You have to tell the stories. You have to, as I had talked to some of the Holocaust survivors, and we're we're the living of their memory. That we, when they're gone, we are their memory, and we have to continue to talk about what happened. Another story is that here we talk about Holocaust survivors. So we're at Birkenau, okay, which what struck me is how much bigger and larger that it was from Auschwitz. I mean, it was incredibly vast. And we're standing in barrack C26, and number C26. Now, this barrack, and it's mostly rubble now, it was the very barrack, the very place where survivor Rose Schindler, okay, once endured the camp horrors. And now let me tell you who Rose Schindler is. She recently passed, lived here a long time in San Diego, recently passed. I got to know her through her children. But we were standing, who were also on this trip with two of her children, Jeff and Roxanne. And their parents, who both survived different camps, had written a book, Two Who Survived. And Jeff and Roxanne, they read a passage while we're standing in their mom's barrack from the book. And then we started to recite the mourner's cottage for all those that did not make it out alive. And here in this vast camp, there's no wildlife. We didn't see anything. But as we're reciting the mourner's cottage, we look, and there was this large flock of birds that was off in the distance. But as we're reciting this, the birds flew directly toward us. They circled, and then they soared away. And it was as if those that perished were saying, thank you for remembering us, for not forgetting us.
Yeah, and for those listeners, the Kaddish is, if you've ever been to, Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah or any type of Jewish service, they say that Kaddish for those who have passed away and so forth on this. So right now, you've been in Poland for how many days when you got to the barracks?
Just for a few days.
So a few days, okay. Have your emotions changed? Have they elevated? Have they gotten up and down and everywhere?
I would say it was absolutely up and down. And I was angry. I mean, a lot of people asked me what I was feeling, and I was just so angry that the world allowed this to happen. And we can never allow this to happen again.
Exactly. And I think for the folks who this is removed from, and every so often we'll see some documentaries on Netflix, whatever, on the Holocaust and so forth. And I was talking to my daughter about this, and I said, and Dwight Eisenhower, you probably know this, made a point that he wanted his troops and the people to film this. He says, because no one is going to believe this is what happened. And if we don't do that, if we don't have archives of these horrible scenes, the men and women in bones, or the stacked up bodies, or the God knows what, the world's going to say that never happened. And thank you, Dwight Eisenhower, for doing that.
No, I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, I believe it was his grandson, was honored this year at the 80th anniversary for exactly that point, that, because of General Eisenhower at the time, as the Supreme Allied Commander, the meticulous documentation that we all bear witness.
You have to talk about the Nova Music Festival Memorial Site.
Yeah, so again, very heavy trip. So after the portion of Poland, we traveled to Israel and went to many different places in Israel. But one of the first stops was the Nova Music Festival Memorial Site, where Hamas terrorists murdered hundreds of people that just wanted to go and listen to music. And it was extremely difficult to walk in this area. At this memorial site, there were hundreds of pictures of the victims. And each of those pictures, it's a person and a story was told, because everybody has their story. And I will tell you, too, is that what brings it home is that the location is so close to Gaza that there was a sign when we arrived that warned that you are under the threat of rockets. If a siren sounds, you have 15 seconds to seek shelter. And something that struck me is that I was walking through the site and looking at the pictures and reading their stories. I came upon a young person who had survived. And he was telling his story to a group of older people, okay? But what struck me most about that, and it was an incredible story, but what struck me is that here we had just left Poland, and the survivors are now in their late 80s and 90s, and they were telling their story. So we're the guardians of their memory, okay, to the younger generation. But here at the Nova Musical Memorial Site, it was a young person telling their story to older people, but the message was the same. And here it was, is that Jews were hunted, Jews were attacked, and Jews were murdered.
Yeah, and we're in 2023. We're not 1941.
Correct.
We're not 1943. We're not 1945. In this, and I know, when you sent me the text message and talked to me about the trip you had, and I said in about 1 second, you will come on the show and talk about this, and you took even a less a second to say, I'll be doing this, what you're doing right now. Talk about the kibbutz.
Yeah, so, here we had talked a little bit earlier about Shahanegev, which is a sister city of San Diego. San Diego has many sister cities, but this one in Shahanega, it's near Gaza in Israel. And as you had mentioned, which is true, is that it was brutally attacked by Hamas terrorists on October 7th, 2023. And regrettably, many of the residents were murdered or kidnapped into Gaza. But on this trip, I met a woman who told us about Yotam Ham, a musician from Kibbutz Farazah, who was kidnapped and later tragically killed by friendly fire while he was escaping Hamas tunnels with two other individuals. And in his honor, she had built a music room inside a bunker at that kibbutz. And she asked if we wanted to see the bunker and the music room, and of course we did. And she led us down into the bunker. And there I saw a drum set, a keyboard, and guitars that stood ready to play, for others in safety. And she told us that Yotam was a drummer. And she showed us a drawing of him holding drumsticks. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I still look back on, and I just can't believe that it happened, but it did. And that I had brought with me a pair of drumsticks from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and I gave them to her. And she had written a song and asked me to play drums as she played guitar and sang. And I tell you, it was a moment that was just born of coincidence, yet filled with intense meaning. And so I got to tell you about this. It was just a spontaneous purchase last January while I was back in Cleveland visiting family. It was my mom's 95th birthday. And people may not know, but the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland, and they have a store at the airport. And I walked into the store, had a few minutes to spare before I jumped on my flight back to San Diego, and I bought another pair of drumsticks. Now I say another pair because I've done this before many times. It's a nice gift to give to people who I know like to drum here in San Diego. And when I got back to San Diego, I took out the drumsticks from my bag and I threw it in a drawer and forgot about it, okay? However, the night before I left for this trip, okay, is that for no reason, quite frankly, I opened the drawer and there were the drumsticks. And I can't explain it, but I just had this feeling that I needed to bring these drumsticks with me, so I did. And I carried them in my day pack all throughout Poland and the same in Israel. And when I was told the story of Yotam and saw the drawing of him holding drumsticks, I could have never imagined, but this is why I had brought the drumsticks. It's pretty incredible that a simple pair of drumsticks had found its way into a bunkered church sanctuary in a community that is such scarred by loss, and in that space where instruments now wait for hands to bring them back to life, the sticks became more than just a souvenir. It was a promise that even in the shadow of tragedy, in Yotam's memory, that the music would go on.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
Yeah, we're chatting with Shelley Zimmerman, retired police chief, but we're not talking about her role in that. We're talking about her trip recently with the San Diego Jewish Federation to Poland, to a couple of the concentration camps, to Israel, where the tragedy of October 7th was, I'm not sure if relived is the right word, that drumstick, I'm not much of a guy that believes in fate and these things, but how do you not when you see this?
I know.
You absolutely have to do that. What were some of the other major takeaways?
Well, I tell you, Jeff, I took my first trip, as we had mentioned before, to Israel in May of 2023, just a few months before the tragedy of in October. And we visited again at that time San Diego sister city, Shahanegev, and Kibbutz Farazan. And at the kibbutz, I met a lovely couple. Matter of fact, I was matched up with this couple, Ram and Lily Edarami, who had hosted me at their lovely home. And one of the first things that they said to me at their home was, "Hey, Shelley, we need to show you where our safe room is. Because, again, we're so close to Gaza that if a siren sounds for incoming rockets, we have 15 seconds to seek shelter." When we visited the nearby school, I noticed that all four sides of the soccer field had a shelter. Again, 15 seconds, all right? So you're on one side of the soccer field or the other. So that's why they're on four sides. All the bus stops, it was a bomb shelter. And something also that struck me is that at the school, the jungle gyms and the play equipment for the young children, the base of it was a bomb shelter. Again, 15 seconds. And I asked them, I said, "How do you live like this?" Okay. And this is what they said. They go, "Shelley, look around and you tell me what you see." I said, "It's absolutely beautiful." Yep. They said, "Exactly. We live in beauty 90% of the time, but 10% of the time we live in terror." Well, regrettably, on October 7th, 2023, they were murdered by Hamas terrorists. And ever since then, I wanted to go back to Israel and do something, my small part.
Yeah, an impactful story. Talk about your involvement with the IDF.
Right. So I volunteered with the Israel Defense Forces through the SAR-L program. And again, I wanted to go back and just do my small little part. Now, this program, the SAR-L program, enables volunteers from around the world to contribute to the security of the state of Israel by assisting on Israel Defense Force bases. And there's an interview process and a several-step process, and they tell you that you're going to be on a base and you'll be part of the logistics section. Now, they also tell you you're not going to know exactly what you're going to do until you report to duty, and you won't know exactly what base that you're going to be assigned to until you report for duty. However, when you report, some of the things that you may be doing is that you may prepare the medical kits that the frontline IDF soldiers that will carry with them, or you might sort equipment or assemble other items and other equipment, or box food rations for the IDF frontline soldiers. So there's a variety of things that you may be doing. And so I looked at this program, I applied for it, I was accepted, and I was very proud to serve.
So what was your responsibility?
Well, to back up a little bit, I will tell you my very first day of service.
I saw this.
Yeah, when we met at Ben Gurion Airport, there was about 100 other people from around the world, and I was assigned to an Air Force base near Gaza But after we had just all gotten our assignments and we're going outside to the different buses, taking people to the many different bases where people were assigned, my app, I had downloaded the Red Alert app, the Home Command app that, notifies you of incoming rockets or ballistic missiles. And just then the app kept going off. The sirens at the airport went off. And there was a ballistic missile fired by the Houthis from Yemen, and the Israel Defense Forces, air defense had missed the rocket, and it had landed just off the road, right near the terminal where we had gathered. So that was, as you can imagine, pretty incredible, very loud, incredible. But the resilience of people in Israel is incredible, so you clear the bomb shelter and now we're back on the buses and going to our respective different bases. But we passed that enormous crater and this huge debris field and coming into the airport, we're just on that road, maybe an hour before. And like I said, I was assigned to an Air Force base near Gaza. And I was there with, there were people from about 8 other countries, and we spoke many languages, but we were united in our desire to stand with and help Israel. And I'll tell you, too, many were not Jewish.
Yeah. Well, that's encouraging to hear as well. Did you have a specific role you had to do?
Well, as I said, there was many different things that you could be doing. Yeah. And so at that particular base, we were...
putting together the kits?
Yeah, we were putting together the rations for the frontline IDF soldiers. And I'll tell you this, is that I remember my dad, who served in World War II, and I know, Drew, you and I have talked about our fathers, World War II.
Guadalcanal from my dad,
yeah.
Right.
And, my dad was World War II machine gunner, Army infantry, and I remember him saying, a couple times that like he would open up his rations and occasionally there'd be like a Tootsie Roll, little Tootsie Roll. And he said that was like something from home, and it was wonderful. And so, we took our duties very seriously. And then I started to, write notes, and I would randomly put them in these rations and, the boxes of the rations for the IDF soldiers. And some of the things that I said was, please be safe. This is from a daughter of a World War II veteran who fought the Nazis during World War II.
Yeah, that's something. Would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely.
Are you going to do it again?
I am going to do it again. I'm looking at dates for next year. But something, too, that really reflected is that, here I am, in Scripps Ranch. I live in Scripps Ranch, and I often hear the sound of, fighter jets, from my home, from Marine Corps Air Station at Miramar, and that was a sound that myself and I know many others they associate with freedom. But I will tell you, I had a different feeling on the Air Force base in Israel as Israel defends itself, fighting a war on multiple fronts, and the sound of those fighter jets took on a whole new meaning to me. It was the sound of survival, Israel's survival.
Yeah. Well, listen, what an impassioned story. Thanks for sharing that. Gives me a little bit of a goosebumps. I'm going to go home and share this one. And I've got your notes here, and if you don't mind, because this is articulated so well, I may even share this with some of the friends in this area. Very powerful. Thank you for sharing this. I think anybody who is... here's a quick story. I don't think she's going to mind me saying it. And if she is, I'll hear about it. So my daughter, 4th grade teacher at Chaparral Elementary in Poway, certainly was mortified like we all were about October 7, 2023. She actually saw, she was blown away, a clip from what happened. And she absolutely was so enraged and about what took place. I mean, she didn't necessarily have to see the clip, but she saw the clip. And Dad, she goes, I'm glad I saw this, because my passion for supporting this country for what happened is you have to see this clip. And it was just absolutely devastating of those people that just got slaughtered.
Yeah, it's, when you say never again, it's not a slogan. It means that we all have to stand up for Jewish hate, for anti-Semitism. And, remaining silent is not neutrality. It is a betrayal of our shared humanity.
Yeah, there's no question about it. So I know we'll shift a little bit of a gear over here. Thank you for sharing challenged athletes you work with.
So let's definitely shift some gear here. So inspiring. These challenged athletes are incredible. The Challenged Athletes Foundation been a huge supporter for many years, and I'm once again this year in October, I'm going to be riding my bicycle. Actually, this year it's going to be from Santa Rosa to San Diego, and over 7 days. And we're raising money to buy adapted sports equipment for those with disabilities to get them back into the game of life through sports. Very meaningful.
How many miles?
It's going to be around 620 miles. So we're well into our training now.
Yeah. So the gentleman sitting next to you, right to your left over here, my former college roommate, is a bike rider.
Oh.
Okay, that's right. And so I'm volunteering him now for the 600 miles. And this is the last time he's going to come to San Diego because I do this. Shelley Zimmerman, you're a treasure. I thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for sharing these very personal experiences. I think it's important for our audience to hear these things. And I think I look forward to hearing more when you come back and do some more work with IDF and all the other wonderful things you do in San Diego.
Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
You met Shelley Zimmerman, former police chief in San Diego, sharing her story, a recent trip to Poland and some concentration camps back in Europe, Auschwitz and Birkenau. And just an amazing story. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and I've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. I'm brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. We've been doing this now for 19 years. Longest running community podcast in the country, and we hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.